Okay, if everything has gone according to plan, we should be live on YouTube. Hello everyone and welcome to Weekends with Avrona, and I have just one tiny hair here going into my eyes and I hate it. Anyway, we need to talk about Switch 2 because it has been a very interesting couple of days. The announcement itself was one thing, but then everything that came after it is also pretty interesting. Obviously, the big news story I just broke is the fact they are actually delaying pre-orders for it in the US because of the tariffs. They didn't specifically say that it is going to cost even more. That it probably is, given how big the tariffs are, but they're more re-evaluating, taking the time to re-evaluate exactly what the consequences of those tariffs are. But we'll get to all of that. There's a lot to go through, and there's so much I want to say about the Switch 2 that I didn't have time to go into in my video, because it's such an interesting thing. It's just such an interesting release, I gotta say. So they of course gave us this little rundown of what it is like. It is not as useful as I would have hoped. There are some things they still don't go into, like for example, just custom processor made by Nvidia. Wow, so descriptive, so useful. That tells me so much. But of course, because the Switch 2 has been leaked to hell and back, we know it's going to be the Tegra T239, I believe was the exact name for this SKU. So it is going to be Nvidia Tegra like before, served them pretty well. It's also still pretty interesting that you know, while the other guys are going with AMD, Nintendo are sticking with Nvidia, and it clearly worked out for them for the Switch 1, so I think it served them well. This partnership served them well. But one thing I don't get is that Nvidia are Nvidia, and they would love an opportunity to showcase exactly how amazing the tech is for the Switch 2, but they also have been very quiet. It's Nvidia. You'd think they'd be tooting their own horn about how amazing the Tegra chip for the Switch 2 is ever since the announcement. So that makes me think there is some reason why they're still being kind of cryptic about it. And there's some NDA-esque agreement between them and Nintendo, which is why they're still not really giving us too many other details. Nvidia have confirmed that DLSS and ray tracing is coming, which I can't wait to see exactly how poorly ray tracing runs on a Switch 2. But DLSS is going to be huge, because when it comes to render scaling, that's something the base Switch utilized a lot, but it just used some base Nintendo model, didn't use a special AI upscaler, kind of like DLSS. Plus it also comes with, you know, all of the other goodies like ray reconstruction that's going to be useful for ray traced games. Again, we have to see exactly what type of DLSS it is. Probably DLSS 3, can't be DLSS 4 because that's exclusive to brand new Blackwell cards, and this is going to be running Ampere, so that's RTX 30 series architecture right there. Anyway, another thing I'm kind of annoyed that they aren't giving us more details is when it comes to the screen, they are saying that's HDR10. That is absolutely awesome. Would love to see exactly what the peak brightness is though. But it does support variable refresh rate up to 120 Hz. All pretty cool, but I don't care anyway because I would not be using the built-in screen. I'm just going to be playing on a TV. I do... When it comes to the OLED, I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't give us an OLED version. However, given how expensive it is already, then OLED would make it even more so. And instead, what they can do is give us an OLED at a later date. What else? Oh yes, Wi-Fi 6, not Wi-Fi 6E, not Wi-Fi 7. Again, for a console that you're mainly using out and about. Obviously, for a lot of people, obviously you have Ethernet when connected up to the dock. But when you are using it in handheld mode, obviously having faster internet would be a lot better there. I'm very curious exactly what the price difference would be there when it comes to Wi-Fi 6 versus 6. I assume at least Wi-Fi 6E is pretty cheap to implement nowadays, given how it has been out for a while. Wi-Fi 7 less so. I think that would add a couple of extra pennies, but Wi-Fi 6 versus 6E, come on. What else? Oh yeah, storage, just a giant leap compared to the Switch 1, but again, I don't think... I personally didn't have any issues with that with the Switch 1, because I mostly just used physical. I don't think I actually downloaded any games apart from like one or two small indies, and that's about it. What else? When it comes to outputting to the TV, one thing I'm kind of annoyed about is the fact that it only goes up to 4K 60. That seems to be purely a bandwidth restriction though, because the HDMI implementation from the dock could not be enough to support 4K 120. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you which HDMI that would be. I think 2.0. I think 2.0 would be enough for 4K 120. Maybe even something less than that. But what it could also be is just the USB-C connector between the console and dock. Now that USB-C is already, again, I don't think they said exactly how fast it is, but it has to be pretty fast, given how it has to handle power. It has to handle, well, you know, power doesn't take up data rate, but still, it has to handle both video and internet and any USB peripherals when connected up via dock, all going by a single USB-C connector. So it has to be at least 20 or 40 gigabit as it is. So again, it could be that that isn't fast enough to handle high-speed internet and also 4K 120 over just a single USB-C connector. What else do we have here that we should probably talk about? Oh yeah, when it comes to SD cards, again, only micro SD Express. Slow ones just like won't be usable at all. They can only be used to copy screenshots and videos, so you can't even use them for games. Again, that wasn't really an issue for me ever. Oh yeah, one thing that people have been freaking out about is the battery. It is larger, but not that much larger that it counterbalances just the fact that the chip itself uses a lot more power, and the fact that the screen itself also uses a lot more power because it's higher refresh rate and higher resolution. So while it is a bit bigger, the battery life actually goes down to 2 hours from 2.5 was the minimum they stated for the Switch, I believe. I believe it was 2.5 to 5.5. And then it kind of went up in the second revision to about 6 or 6.5, as it says right here. So the battery is actually, it is bigger, but again, it doesn't really matter when the actual power of the device itself has also definitely gone up. So those are kind of the main things there. Apart from that, you know, the Joy-Cons are pretty much, you know, you saw them direct. I'm not going to basically sit here and go over the entire direct again, because you have very much seen it. What I really want to focus on is some of the other stuff that has kind of gone down since then. You've probably seen people have been clowning on Nintendo for how expensive the console itself is, how expensive the games are, given how they're going charging up to $80 for first-party games, which is insane. And then if you want to just play something like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, but take advantage of the better hardware of the Switch 2, then you have to pay for an upgrade pack. Not to mention the fact that that tech demo, it's a paid demo. It's $6 from what I remember, but it's still $6 too much for what should be a pack-in title to just show you the basics of the Switch 2. That's actually insane. So I don't get, even at $6, the amount of people are going to buy it is probably less than 100. So why not just go for free? Are those $600 so important to you? I don't get that. I actually don't get that. But of course we have to talk about the price of the Switch itself and some of the chaos behind that. So the official price, as they listed, was, what was it, $450? I'm just kind of quickly scrolling through the presentation here. And as again, not talking about accessories, you're gonna need to rebuy pretty much everything because the Joy-Cons are different sizes. Not talking about the camera, which again, from what we know, you probably can just use the same camera, but it was where's the price? I swear it was $450. Yeah, it is. So the big issue with all of that is that it can go up even further because of those tariffs. However, there is a point I really want to kind of focus on here. Now, I think we can all agree that the Trump tariffs are dumb and that they don't do anything good for literally anyone. However, one thing that I think needs clarification, if we just kind of quickly switch back here to the browser. So this is from the official White House website, a note from the 2nd of April. There are some things that will be exempt from these tariffs. This includes, as you can see in this section right here, semiconductors. Now, what exactly it will mean in practice, we have to wait and see. So as you can see, a lot of tech companies are already increasing the prices. I know Height went on record recently talking about how their cases and how their other PC accessories are going to go up in prices because of the tariffs, because again, even though it's technically kind of tech, that it's not semiconductors. So I highly doubt it is going to be that a finished product, a finished console like a Switch 2 is going to be exempt. When it means semiconductors, and again, someone tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe what it means is just the GPU itself, right? If you import into the US a board, a board, a chip and a board around it, then that is going to be exempt from the tariffs. I think a finished product like a console or anything else, a full PC, a laptop, anything like that, that is not going to be exempt. The things that are going to be exempt are things like motherboards with chips in them, CPUs again will probably be exempt. We'll see. Memory like RAM sticks, that's technically just semiconductors on a board, right? I don't know. It is kind of vague. So if anyone does know, that'd be amazing. M. Quotra says in chat, I'm expecting $100 games by end of year. Yeah, probably. Wait for GTA 6. That's probably going to be $100. Don't get me wrong. The guys over at Rockstar, Take-Two, whoever it is that's gonna have the final say about how much GTA 6 is gonna cost. They're watching this whole situation very, very closely, seeing how people are reacting to this thus far, to get an idea of what they can get away with, because people are going to buy it anyway. And there have been rumors about GTA 6 costing $100 for ages now. We'll have to wait and see. That is if the game even launches this year. There have been no official release date, rumors of delays and whatnot, so we have to wait and see. But yeah, it is going to be very interesting to see exactly how these tariffs are going to impact the Switch and how much more expensive it is. Just going by the basic rates from that giant chart that the admin has produced, including places like Jan Mayen that don't even have a permanent population on them. It is going to result in any kind of finished tech products, not semiconductors, but finished tech products, to go up in price by at least a couple of $100. So you can expect the Switch 2 to be $500 plus without a game. By the time this is all over, it could actually be closer to the PS5 when it launched. And you can expect the PS5 Pro to also go up in price now because of the tariffs as well. So basically, if you're going to buy anything, if you have any big purchases planned, buy them now. Buy them now before these tariffs go into effect on the 9th of April. Is it? Yeah, it is right here, 9th of April. Buy now. Take out a loan if you have to, because it's still probably gonna cost you less than after these tariffs. Okay, not financial advice, don't take out a loan, but still, you get my point. Even with a loan interest rate, that's still probably going to be better than paying them with the tariffs after the 9th of April. It is actually unprecedented what these are gonna have, what effect these are gonna have on tech, especially given how big the tariffs are from places like Taiwan, from places which, again, granted, in all fairness, semiconductors in Taiwan are not going to be affected, but that's not the only thing we get out of Taiwan. I say we. This only really affects the US. So I'm here all smug as in Europe, not really caring about us, but there are going to be huge repercussions for everyone. Like the EU economy, the UK economy are also going to suffer because of this, even though these tariffs from Taiwan, China, whatnot, they won't be as apparent to us when we import things here to Europe, but still, it is the effect is going to be actually huge. By the way, did you read about how Nintendo was specifically moving a lot of the production from the PRC over to Vietnam to avoid tariffs, as the trade war between the US and China has been heating up, only for Vietnam just to be hit with huge tariffs as well? It is actually, it's a fun time to be alive. Fun things are happening, I say with a tortured smile on my face. Not sure how this applies to Switch, but I'm pretty sure that automotive tariffs cover laptops. Well, how does that work? Automotive tariffs cover laptops. Huh, I honestly don't know. Yeah, if anyone's wondering why I'm constantly like looking up there, is because I just have my my chat up there. There was something else I want to talk about. Oh, yes. This is something I found extremely interesting that was posted in an interview with the devs. And that is regarding the proper compatibility with the Switch. There are some games that we know are not going compatible. Mostly stuff that requires the IR camera that is not part of the Switch 2, which I said it in my live reaction to the event itself. Feels like giving up a bit too early, and I don't imagine the costs of implementing an IR camera are too big. I really wish that they kept it and just tried something else to make interesting experiences with it, but also because it would save the headache of having the handful of games that do support it not be compatible. Because compatibility on the Switch is becoming a real pain, because first you had games that were not compatible with the Switch Lite because they required detachable Joy-Cons. So you had a handful of games that you had to worry about that, and now you also have to worry about all of these games that could or could not be compatible with the Switch 2, and that thing that just makes it a more hostile, confusing experience, especially given how, well, the Switch 2 is popular with everyone. There's a lot of adults who are too into the Switch, way too into the Switch for their own good, but there's also obviously a lot of kids. It's nice and bright and colorful and cheap, or at least used to be cheap, and you have your Marios and your Kirby's on there, and like, imagine a kid trying to understand why some game they had on the Switch 1 is now not available on the brand new Switch. Though to be fair, I don't think a lot of kids will be really asking the parents to upgrade to a Switch 2. That's a complete different conversation. I think I also talked about it in my live reaction video, but if you were a kid, you know, and you looked at that, what about the Switch 2 really makes you want to nag your parents to give you to buy you a Switch 2? Like, I can't think of anything. I honestly can't think of anything that you can point to and go, this is why I need a Switch 2. But anyway. Car is computer. Are you talking about like how cars technically count under like electronic tariffs because of, you know, the amount of tech in them now? Yeah, I guess that's another very interesting area right now, given how cars are just becoming completely electrical with so many, just, you can basically have a computer in a car. I mean, wasn't it Tesla that wanted to have like a proper gaming rig we can play like AAA games on it? I'm pretty sure something like that. So yeah, it's another very interesting area of these tariffs now, where things like that kind of come into it. So yeah, coming back to the Switch and compatibility, the one thing I found very interesting is that the two are not technically fully compatible on a hardware level, the games. That's very surprising on a lot of levels. So they basically talk here that it isn't compatible on a hardware level, even though they both use the underlying Nintendo architecture for things and the same NVIDIA Tegra architecture. It's a different GPU architecture, you know, going from Maxwell to Ampere, but does not usually affect compatibility. It's just the same ARM-based thing. So I'm really, really confused by why exactly it is not fully compatible. I don't think they go into too much detail about why it is. Because, yeah, it's right here. Switch 2 doesn't contain any Switch hardware. That is a super, super interesting thing. They're comparing it to how the DS and the 3DS had shared hardware, how the Wii U and the Wii had shared hardware, but the Switch 2 doesn't contain any Switch hardware. That is really, really interesting that that is the direction they've gone with it, and that there's so much incompatibility between this new SoC and this new system in general that Nintendo and Nvidia have made here compared to the Switch. So instead, what they're doing for emulation is something, as they call it, something in between software and hardware emulation. If it was just software, obviously the performance would take a huge hit, and the Switch 2 would kind of defeat its own purpose. You know, being able to play your favorite Switch games, but at a higher frame rate and a higher resolution. So it is going to be interesting exactly what the performance penalty is now because of it, and how much faster, you know, it could be if they went with a different direction there. So they're basically going, yeah. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see how that all plays out. And that also makes it that most games are going to be compatible. However, the games that won't be compatible are the ones that the hardware just doesn't support it. Like, again, higher camera or some of the Nintendo Labo stuff. But apart from that, they are basically going through and making sure that all of these games are playable. Which it has to be a huge task given how many games are now being pushed out onto Switch. I'm kind of curious to see how it works with third-party ones. I'm assuming that they want to hand over some of that responsibility over to third parties, making sure that their games are fully compatible. But anyway, if anyone has any better details about what is actually so different between the two that you can't natively play Switch 1 games on a Switch 2, please, oh please let me know. I'm actually very curious as to why that is. Because again, they don't give too much of an explanation, but they are being extremely quiet for some reason about some of the hardware behind the Switch. But again, either them or Nvidia, they will probably tell us everything very, very soon. So those are just kind of my extended thoughts on the Switch 2, and the question of, do I get one? I probably wouldn't play a lot on it. I haven't touched my Switch 1 in years at this point, because I just don't care. There's nothing on it I care about. But purely for review purposes, purely to review it for this very channel, I think it could be a very, very interesting video comparing it to my Switch 1, seeing exactly how it compares. Console-related content doesn't usually perform as well on my channel. It's usually the PC stuff that does really well. Console stuff rarely does well. So that's why I'm kind of skeptical about getting a pre-order in. But I don't know, I'm tempted. That is if I can even get a pre-order, because it has been pretty difficult, even without completely stopping pre-orders like in the US. Obviously, companies are taking a lot of steps to make sure that, you know, scalpers, but also the limited stock. So Nintendo have the really dumb program. Amazon, the way they're doing it is you basically have to ask for a reply. So it's a lottery. So you basically have to wish you get lucky. I have submitted a request on Amazon to get an invite to buy the product, which is just such a dumb thing you have to do now, but oh well. So hopefully you can get on that. I believe Game sold out pretty much instantly. Curry's, maybe. For Curry's, you have to go into store. So I have to, you know, go on my way to actually go and pre-order one from a physical location, which is dumb. But again, I get why they do that to, again, prevent bots and scalpers. Yeah, it's. I'm sorry, is this show kind of depressing? Because I feel it's kind of depressing. Between all of these hoops you have to go through just to pre-order something to beat the scalpers, to the insane prices that Nintendo are charging to it, to just the dumb climate around buying tech now in general because of the tariffs. Man, this is a depressing show, so hence I will probably be ending it right here. If you want to help offset the costs of getting a potential Switch 2, if I can again pre-order one, then hey, super chats are an option if you want to help support the channel. All of that money goes straight back into, you know, being able to afford stuff like that for projects. Really awesome projects are coming soon, including finally a follow-up, hopefully on this thing. If you haven't watched that original video when I was trying to print stuff off my PlayStation 2, you should watch it. It's a really fun video. Basically, the printer I have it's not dead, but I'm pretty sure it's the amount of knowledge you need to repair it is beyond me. The issue with it is that it hasn't been used in so long that the tubes have just filled up with dried ink, and I have no idea how to get rid of it. Again, if you're a lot better with printers, maybe you'll know, but I'm not experienced, so I just bought another one. So it's stuff like that where super chats really go a long way, making projects like these actually doable, and it is a really, really fun project. Again, if you haven't watched the original video, I highly recommend you do that in preparation for part 2. But anyway, I think that's about it. Yeah, M-Culture pretty much summarizes it very, very well, saying it's a depressing week, and it's only Saturday. We still have one more day where something can disappoint us. I really wish that this show was on for Wednesday, so I could do the "it's only Wednesday" meme, but nope, it's a Saturday. But still, one more day where something terrible, awful, just horrendous can happen that makes the rest of this week seem like the best in forever. We'll see. We'll see. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Morning chores. You have to be like what, on the west coast of America if you're doing your morning chores at almost 8 p.m. here. I know that the timing of the show is kind of weird because obviously it's best suited for people in Europe. Obviously, it's a nice like chill evening show. However, and given the fact that it always goes up on a Saturday, it means that at the same time, people who are, you know, away in the new world, in the Americas, can watch it more in the morning, afternoon, because they have no work today. It should be pretty simple. But it also makes things really, really difficult because like trying to organize things like guests. I've been trying to get a really awesome guest on the show, and it's been kind of difficult. One, because they're traveling a lot, and I've also been traveling a lot, but also because, you know, getting people on at this time is kind of annoying on a weekend when people actually do something, when they have a life. I don't have a life, hence why I can do these shows on a Saturday. So it is probably going to be a pre-recorded segment with that special guest who is pre-recorded and then play it as part of the show on a Saturday. I chose this. I brought this on myself by having a show on a Saturday, but, you know, it's called Weekends with Avrona. If I did it on a Friday instead, it would make absolutely no sense. West Coast and stretching definition of morning. Hey, you know, I'm not really one to judge. I usually eat breakfast at around noon, so anyway, that's probably going to be it for this show. I think it's been going on for a healthy amount. Like I said, I've been trying to get a really special guest. Maybe they'll be on next week. Maybe we'll figure something out. We'll see. And again, if you have any other suggestions on what you want to see done in these shows in the future, do let me know. I don't want to just be about news and me about ranting about depressing stuff. I want it to be variety. I want to have guests. I want to have projects. I want just to do fun kind of tech related stuff on this weekend show. So again, if you have any ideas, let me know. But anyway, that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this live stream. If you did, make sure to subscribe, like, whatever, and I'll see you all in whatever I make next. Goodbye everyone. Goodbye.
I've been praying.